In the year 1137 or 1138, a boy was born in the city of Tikrit, on the banks of the Tigris River. His name was Al-ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, Saladin. He came from a Kurdish family of honorable service. His father, Najm ad-Din Ayyub, and his uncle, Shirkuh, were soldiers under the Zengid rulers. On the very night of Saladin's birth, destiny struck. His father was forced to leave Tikrit after a dispute with the governor, as the family crossed a river in exile. Shirkuh is said to have remarked, "Perhaps this child is the blessing for which God has driven us from here." The family resettled first in Baalbek and later in Damascus. These cities became Saladin's true home, shaping his childhood. Damascus was a center of Islamic learning and culture. Here, young Yusuf was drawn more to books than to weapons. He studied the Quran, law, and the sciences, developing a calm and thoughtful character. Yet he was not blind to the world around him. Damascus was under constant pressure from the Crusader states, and his uncle Shirkuh's military life introduced him to the discipline of soldiers. Saladin learned strategy by watching rather than rushing into battle. Even in youth, he was humble, patient, and deliberate, qualities that later defined his leadership. By his late teens, Saladin was no longer just a quiet boy from Tikrit. He had become a young man shaped by faith, knowledge, and the realities of war. The Muslim world around him was divided, while Crusader kingdoms stood strong. In this environment, the foundation of his destiny was set. The exile-born child of Tikrit was on the path to become the leader who would one day change history. By the mid-12th century, the Muslim world stood divided, its strength scattered among rival rulers. But one man sought to restore unity, Nur ad-Din Zengi, the powerful emir of Aleppo and Damascus. It was under his banner that Saladin began his true service. In 1154, Saladin's family moved permanently to Damascus, where Nur ad-Din had established his rule. Here, the young Yusuf ibn Ayyub found himself under the influence of a leader known for his piety, justice, and determination to resist the Crusaders. Nur ad-Din became not only a patron to Saladin's father and uncle, but also a model of righteous leadership for the young man himself. Saladin's uncle, Asad ad-Din Shirkuh, was a fiery general in Nur ad-Din's army. He often took Yusuf with him on campaigns, introducing him to the harsh realities of war. These were years of constant struggle, raids, skirmishes, and battles against both Crusader forces and rival Muslim factions. Unlike his uncle, Saladin was not aggressive by nature. He preferred humility and patience, often serving quietly in the background. Yet those who observe him noticed a sharp mind, a calm temperament, and a growing talent for leadership. He absorbed strategy, discipline, and politics without drawing attention to himself. The Crusader states were never far from Damascus, and Saladin witnessed firsthand their castles, their armies, and their ambitions. He learned that victory would not come from reckless attacks, but from unity, patience, and faith. By the late 1160s, opportunity came in Egypt. Nur ad-Din sent Shirkuh to intervene in its politics, and Saladin went with him. At this stage, no one imagined that the quiet nephew would one day surpass his uncle and rise above all rivals. Yet destiny was already moving. Through loyalty, service, and faith, Saladin was being shaped for greatness. In 1169, Egypt, the wealthiest land of the Muslim world, stood on the edge of collapse. The once mighty Fatimid Caliphate was weak, divided, and vulnerable. Crusaders dreamed of seizing Cairo, while Nur ad-Din of Syria sent his trusted general Shirkuh to defend it. At his side was his quiet nephew, Saladin. Victory came quickly. The Fatimid vizier was overthrown, and Shirkuh rose to power. Yet only 2 months later, he died suddenly. Egypt, restless and divided, now needed a leader. Few expected greatness from a modest 31-year-old Saladin. To many, he seemed inexperienced, perhaps even easy to control. But destiny had chosen differently. As vizier, Saladin walked a dangerous line. Outwardly, he served the Fatimid Caliph, but his loyalty was to the Sunni Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad and to Nur ad-Din in Damascus. In silence and patience, he began building a new order. He strengthened the army, placed loyal commanders in charge, and secured Egypt's wealth. He restored stability to Cairo, earning respect for his fairness and discipline. Unlike most rulers, Saladin rejected cruelty and luxury. He dressed simply, prayed humbly, and ruled with justice. People began to see not a puppet, but a leader. Most importantly, Saladin prepared the ground for Egypt's return to Sunni Islam. He supported scholars, revived Sunni practices, and gradually shifted the balance of power. By 1171, the last Fatimid caliph died. Saladin declared allegiance to the Abbasid caliph, ending 2 centuries of Fatimid rule. This moment changed history. Egypt, the richest land of the Muslim world, was now united under Saladin's hand. With its armies, its wealth, and its faith restored, Egypt became the foundation of his rising power. The quiet nephew had surpassed his uncle. The humble vizier had become master of Egypt, and the world was about to feel his strength. With the fall of the Fatimid Caliphate in 1171, Saladin stood as master of Egypt. Yet victory brought new challenges. The throne he now held was fragile, surrounded by rivals who doubted his right to rule. Many saw him as a young outsider, a Kurd among Egyptians, and a servant of Nur ad-Din. But Saladin's true power was just beginning to unfold. He worked tirelessly to strengthen his new realm. He reformed the army, replacing unreliable soldiers with men of loyalty and discipline. He revived Cairo's economy, cutting waste and ensuring fair taxes. Merchants and common folk alike began to feel the benefits of his justice. But Saladin's greatest strength lay not in wealth or armies. It was in his character. He lived simply, rejecting luxury. He prayed in the mosques with ordinary people, gave freely to the poor, and judged disputes with fairness. Stories of his humility spread quickly, building a reputation that no enemy could silence. At the same time, he prepared Egypt for the great struggle ahead. He restored Sunni scholarship, welcomed jurists and scholars, and made Cairo once again a center of Islamic learning. The people saw in him not just a ruler, but a defender of faith. Yet shadows lingered. In Damascus, Nur ad-Din watched carefully. Though Saladin served in his name, whispers grew that Egypt's new vizier might soon become too powerful. Many expected conflict between master and servant. But Saladin waited, patient and cautious, never rushing against his old ally. By 1174, Saladin had transformed Egypt from a broken state into a united, disciplined, and wealthy kingdom. The quiet nephew of Shirkuh was no longer just a commander. He was a statesman, a ruler, and a rising star of the Muslim world. The Crusaders feared him. Rival Muslim princes envied him. And history began to recognize that Saladin's mission had only just begun. When Nur ad-Din died in 1174, the Muslim world trembled with uncertainty. His death left a power vacuum in Syria. The boy king al-Salih Ismail was too young and fragile to hold the vast domains his father once commanded. Local emirs and governors began vying for influence, each seeking to expand his power. Into this chaos stepped Saladin. No longer just a vizier of Egypt, he was now a ruler with both wealth and an army behind him. At first, many doubted him. He was not a Turk like the Zengids, but a Kurd. To some, he seemed an outsider, a mere upstart who had risen too quickly. Rivals whispered that he had betrayed Nur ad-Din's legacy. But Saladin was patient. He knew that if he rushed, the fragile unity of the Muslim world would shatter. So he moved carefully, presenting himself not as an ambitious conqueror, but as a guardian of Islam's cause. In 1174, Saladin marched from Egypt to Damascus. The city, remembering his uncle Shirkuh and respecting Saladin's growing reputation, opened its gates without resistance. One by one, towns and fortresses began to recognize his authority. Yet not all welcomed him. In Aleppo and Mosul, the Zengid lords resisted fiercely. For years, Saladin balanced diplomacy and war, signing treaties when it suited him, then taking the sword when persuasion failed. The Muslim rulers mistrusted him. They saw his rise as a threat to their own autonomy. Saladin fought several skirmishes, not against crusaders, but against fellow Muslims who accused him of seeking power under the cloak of religion. Yet with each passing year, his influence grew stronger. By 1186, through patience and determination, he unified both Egypt and Syria under his banner, a feat no leader since Nur ad-Din had achieved. But while Saladin secured the Muslim front, the Crusaders watched with alarm. They knew that a united Egypt and Syria posed a grave danger to their fragile kingdoms. The first great test came in 1177 at the Battle of Montcassard. Saladin led a massive army into Palestine, expecting an easy victory against the young King Baldwin IV Jerusalem, stricken with leprosy. Yet fate had other plans. At Montcassard, Baldwin, barely able to sit upright, led a desperate charge with just a few thousand knights. Against all odds, the Crusaders crushed Saladin's army. Thousands of his men were slain. Saladin barely escaped with his life. It was a humiliating defeat. The world saw that the mighty Sultan could bleed. But Saladin learned from this disaster. He rebuilt his forces, improved discipline, and vowed never again to underestimate his enemies. From that day, he approached every campaign with greater caution and preparation. Over the next years, Saladin tested the Crusader states with raids and sieges. He attacked fortresses, cut supply lines, and forced truces when necessary. Baldwin IV, though young and sick, proved a resilient opponent. Yet Saladin's patience outlasted the king's health. By the mid-1180s, Baldwin was dead, and the kingdom of Jerusalem was weakened by infighting and reckless leaders, especially the hot-headed Reynald of Chatillon. By 1186, the balance of power in the Holy Land had shifted. Saladin, after years of patience and calculation, now ruled a vast empire stretching from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates in Syria. For the first time in decades, the Muslim world stood united under a single banner. His enemies, the Crusader states, were weak, divided, and led by reckless men. In Jerusalem, the leper king Baldwin IV had passed away. His death left the throne to his young nephew, Baldwin V, and soon after, to King Guy of Lusignan, a man with little wisdom and even less authority. Yet more dangerous than Guy was Reynald of Chatillon, Lord of Carrick and Montreal, a man infamous for his cruelty. For years, Reynald had harassed Muslim caravans, violated treaties, and even threatened to march on Mecca and Medina themselves. He represented everything Saladin despised: arrogance, greed, and blind hatred. Saladin had shown restraint for years. He honored truces, negotiated when possible, and avoided reckless confrontation. But Reynald's provocations crossed every line. In late 1186, Reynald attacked a massive Muslim caravan traveling from Cairo to Damascus, filled not only with goods, but also with women and children. The merchants were robbed, the people enslaved, and the caravan's guards slaughtered. This was no act of war. It was banditry, a direct violation of the peace treaty signed with Jerusalem. Saladin demanded justice. King Guy, weak and hesitant, did nothing. Reynald boasted he was beyond the Sultan's reach. That insult was the breaking point. Saladin vowed, "By God, I will kill Reynald with my own hands." The time for patience had ended. In the spring of 1187, Saladin began preparations for the greatest campaign of his life. From the mosques of Cairo and Damascus, the call to jihad echoed across the land. Warriors and volunteers poured into his camps: Kurds, Arabs, Turks, even Bedouin tribes. By June, he had assembled a mighty army, perhaps 30,000 strong, including 12,000 elite cavalry. His banners, emblazoned with Quranic verses, rose high over the plains of Syria. On the other side, the Crusader kingdom was fractured. Some nobles counseled caution, but King Guy, pressured by Reynald and the Templars, chose war. By June 1187, Guy mustered nearly every knight of the kingdom, around 20,000 men, including 1,200 mounted knights. The pride of Christendom. It was a desperate gamble. If the army fell, there would be nothing left to defend Jerusalem. In late June, Saladin struck. He attacked Tiberias on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. The fortress belonged to Count Raymond of Tripoli, who, ironically, had favored peace with Saladin. But Saladin knew his target well. By threatening Tiberias, he forced the Crusaders into a deadly choice: either march their entire army across the dry, scorching plains to relieve the city, or sit idle and watch when their own fall. The Crusaders chose to march. On July 3rd, 1187, King Guy led his army out of the fortress of Sephoria. Their goal was Tiberias, but the road was long, the summer sun merciless, and the Muslim horsemen hovered around them like hawks, cutting off wells and ambushing supply lines. By the time the Crusaders reached the plateau of Hattin, near a pair of extinct volcanoes known as the Horns of Hattin, they were exhausted, parched, and surrounded. Saladin's strategy was masterful. His troops set fire to the dry grass, smoke choking the Crusaders and worsening their thirst. The Muslims showered them with arrows, while drums and horns thundered across the valley. The Christians' famed knights could not charge. Their horses were too weak, the ground too rough, the enemy too numerous. At dawn, July 4th, the battle began. Saladin's army tightened the noose. Wave after wave of Muslim cavalry struck the Crusader lines. The Knights of Jerusalem, weighed down by heat and armor, fought bravely but without hope. Saladin himself watched calmly from a hill, directing his forces with precision. By midday, the Crusader army was collapsing. King Guy's banner fell. The Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, protectors of the true cross relic, were slaughtered. The sacred relic itself, the cross believed to hold a fragment of Christ's crucifixion, was captured by Saladin's troops. Its loss shook Christendom to its core. When the dust cleared, the Crusader army was annihilated. Thousands lay dead. Thousands more were taken prisoner. Only a handful escaped to the coast. The proud kingdom of Jerusalem had lost nearly all its fighting men in a single day. Among the captured were King Guy himself and the hated Reynold of Chatillon. Saladin treated King Guy with courtesy, offering him cool water to drink. But when the cup was passed to Reynold, Saladin declared, "It is not for me to offer water to one who has broken faith and shed innocent blood." Then, fulfilling his vow, Saladin struck Reynold down with his own sword. To his soldiers, this was not vengeance but justice. After Saladin's decisive victory at Hattin in July 1187, the Crusader defenses collapsed. One fortress after another fell before him. And on September 20th, 1187, Saladin's army surrounded Jerusalem. Inside the city, fear reigned. Only a few thousand soldiers remained to defend it. Women, children, and pilgrims had sought refuge within its walls. Command of the defense was in the hands of Balian of Ibelin, a brave but weary commander. Saladin first offered peace. If the city would surrender without bloodshed, all would be spared. But Balian replied that he would fight for his honor and his people's safety. He declared, "If we are forced, we will burn the city, kill our wives and children, destroy our holy places, so that nothing falls into your hands." It was a terrifying threat. Saladin knew that if the city were taken by storm, massacre would be inevitable. He resolved that the city must be won, but with mercy and justice. The Muslim army pressed the siege, launching stones and assaults against the gates. Within days, the walls trembled. Panic spread inside Jerusalem. Balian realized resistance could not last. At last, he sent word to Saladin, asking to negotiate. He sought safety for the lives and property of the people. Saladin agreed but set terms. Each man would pay 10 dinars, each woman 5, each child 1. Those unable to pay would become slaves. Balian protested that many were poor and could not afford such ransom. Then Saladin gave an answer that astonished even his enemies. He declared that thousands of the poor would be freed without payment. His brother and ministers also purchased the freedom of many captives. This act of generosity left the Crusaders stunned. And so on October 2nd, 1187, Jerusalem surrendered to the Muslims. It was the very same date, nearly 90 years earlier, when the Crusaders had taken the city in rivers of blood. But this time, the scene was different. There was no massacre, no revenge. Those who could pay the ransom left in peace, and for those who could not, Saladin kept the gates open. The Aqsa Mosque was cleansed and reopened for prayer. Crosses and bells erected by the Crusaders were removed, but no church was destroyed. Christian pilgrims were still allowed to visit their holy places. It was an act of mercy that the city had not seen in 1099. The fall of Jerusalem made Saladin not only a sultan, but a great conqueror. He had turned his victory not into vengeance, but into justice and compassion. It was this moment that secured his place in history forever. After the fall of Jerusalem, waves of joy spread across the Muslim world. But in Europe, the news struck like a shock. The Pope and kings trembled. The Crusader states feared that Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control forever. And it was this fear that gave rise to the Third Crusade. In 1189, the German Emperor Frederick Barbarossa England's Richard the Lionheart, and France's Philip II began assembling the Crusader armies. Yet the most renowned among them was Richard, later called Lionheart. Richard was a brave and experienced warrior, whose very name sent shivers through his enemies. Saladin had already secured his empire. Communication between Egypt and Syria was strong. The armies were ready and the soldiers' morale was high. The Third Crusader army first advanced toward Acre. This port and fortress was crucial, for without capturing it, the European forces could not penetrate further inland. The siege of Acre was long and grueling. After months of effort, the Crusaders finally captured the city in 1191. After the fall of Acre, the Crusaders turned toward Jerusalem, but Saladin skillfully arranged his forces. Avoiding large-scale battles, he launched smaller attacks, weakened enemy positions, and struck at their supply lines. Several times, Richard launched fierce assaults against Saladin, yet he never achieved complete victory. The most famous battle was at Arsuf. Here, Richard attacked with great courage, but Saladin's army, through strong defense and careful strategy, prevented him from winning. Throughout the battle, both leaders showed mutual respect. The bravery of the Crusaders and the wisdom of the Muslims set a rare example in history. Later, there was the siege of Jaffa. Here, too, both sides experienced victories and setbacks. Richard attempted to capture the city by sea, but Saladin strengthened its defenses. Eventually, negotiations stabilized the situation, and both sides established peace in certain regions. The most remarkable aspect of the Third Crusade was a respect and honor between Richard and Saladin. Both acknowledged each other's bravery and wisdom, and during the fighting, ensured minimal harm to civilians. In the end, the war concluded. The Crusaders managed to secure some territories, but Jerusalem remained under Muslim control forever. Saladin proved that faith, wisdom, patience, and justice together could achieve victory. Saladin Ayyubi, who earned renown throughout the Muslim world and became a figure feared for Crusaders, remained a man of simple living even in his final years. He was a ruler of vast lands, governing from Egypt and Syria to Hijaz, yet until the very end of his life, he never indulged in wealth or luxury. The hallmark of his character was humility. Even with his armies, ministers, and family under his command, he enforced strict principles. Wealth was to be used solely for the welfare of the people and the state. Saladin's generosity was unparalleled. After battles and conquests, he would take the initiative to free prisoners and wounded soldiers, assist those in need, and care for orphans. His people knew that their ruler's heart was devoted not only to power, but to justice and humanity. Even during war, he never compromised his principles nor treated his enemies inhumanely. In his final days, Saladin's health deteriorated severely. He was afflicted by fever and extreme weakness and remained bedridden for nearly 2 weeks. During this time, he continued to give his final counsel to his family, ministers, and soldiers, reminding them of the values of justice, humility, and morality. In 1193, he passed away in Damascus at approximately 55 or 56 years of age. His death sent waves of grief across the Muslim world and even reached Europe. Millions attended his funeral, honoring his fairness, generosity, and courage. This final chapter reminds us that the true measure of a great conqueror lies not merely in victories and empire, but in character, generosity, and justice. Saladin's life remains a shining example in history, a legacy that endures forever, because legends never die. If this journey inspired you, don't forget to like the video, share it with those who love history, and subscribe to our channel for more epic stories of the past.